Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Wisdom in the Best Books and Films, where we find bite-sized nuggets of truth and use them to become better people. I'm Jake Bear, the host, and this week I am going to continue our theme of reading some quotes from Pendragon Cycle books. Particularly this week we are still in Book 2, Merlin, and the TV series talks briefly about the Hill people and that Merlin was raised by the Hill people, but it doesn't go into very much detail, so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the part of the book which does go into a lot of detail about the Hill people. So the most recent episode of the film, or of the TV series rather, that I have watched was episode 6, and it has bits of it that hint at this, where it talks about, they call him Merlin Wealth or something like that in the show. And this episode addresses where that comes from, just kind of shows up in the show. So I hope you enjoy, and as usual, if you do like the show, please share it with friends and family. Please leave a review. Please subscribe. I'm grateful to all of you who continually listen. This week's episode is called Children, Wealth and Responsibility. Sometimes, when worldly cares consume too much of my energy, when work frustrates me, or when I choose to stay up too late and face the next day exhausted, I let parenting become a chore. I do the bare minimum to keep my children safe. I lose patience too quickly. I neglect the quiet teaching moments that form their character. When that happens, I have forgotten something essential. Children are not an interruption to life. They are the wealth of it. In Merlin, Book 2 of the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen R. Lawhead, Merlin spends several years among the Hill people. Of them, he writes, children were held in especially high regard among them. Their language proved this in that child and wealth were the same to them, Ayuwen. This one word served both meanings. They viewed children as others might view honored guests, worthies, deserving of consideration and respect. End quote. To the Hill people, children were not a burden to be managed, but a treasure to be cherished. The very word for child meant wealth. That perspective reshapes everything. When we hear the word wealth, we think of money, something valuable, something full of potential. Wealth can grow if invested wisely. It can multiply if stewarded carefully. Or it can be squandered through neglect and carelessness. Children are like that. They are unrealized potential, souls entrusted to us. When we raise them well, they flourish into the fullness of what God created them to be. When we neglect them through impatience, distraction, or indifference, the loss is far greater than financial poverty. It is relational poverty, moral poverty, generational poverty. To see children as wealth changes the posture of parenting. It turns irritation into stewardship. It transforms duty into sacred responsibility. It reminds us that the daily investments, listening, correcting gently, teaching patiently, are not small things. They are deposits into eternity. There is another lesson in Merlin's time among the Hill people. Though nearly grown, Merlin was considered a child because he lacked the proper upbringing. They did not shame him for what he had not yet been taught, they instructed him. We live in a world where many people have never been shown what maturity looks like. It is easy to label them as childish, entitled, irresponsible, selfish, but often they are simply untaught. While we cannot restructure society, we can embody maturity ourselves. We can model responsibility, integrity, and patience. In doing so, we teach without preaching. Children are wealth, but wealth requires stewardship. If we treat parenting as a sacred trust, rather than a burdensome obligation, we will discover something remarkable. The treasure we are investing in is also the source of our deepest joy. The question is not whether we possess wealth. The question is whether we are tending it. That is the end of this week's episode of Wisdom in the Best Books and Films. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week we will be continuing our King Arthur themed short stories, but I will actually be moving on from direct King Arthur stories into ones that are just inspired by King Arthur. So show up next week if you want to see some of that. I do think that King Arthur stories have inspired a large amount of different stories over the hundreds of years since they've been written. So join me next week and have a great week.